All right, I think we've got everyone.
Great. Well, thanks everyone for joining. Apologies for being a couple minutes late. We're having some network issues on our end, so if the audio or video goes out, apologies in advance. I think we're probably good, but just wanted to give a heads up there. So, Linda, I don't know if you want to go ahead and jump in.
I will. Yep. I will do that. So, good morning to everyone who is on the West Coast, and welcome to the second group session for pharmacy benefit managers. I will apologize in advance. We did have a presentation, but with our network issues, it is not accessible at the moment. My name is Linda Wyant. I am a healthcare senior manager at Myers and Stauffer, a national accounting and compliance firm supporting government-sponsored healthcare programs. And I'm joined by my colleague, Bobby Courtney, today. He's a principal at Myers and Stauffer, and he'll be guiding us through the discussion portion of this session. So I'm going to proceed through some of the discussion points that we had for these presentations that we have been giving and these focus group discussions that we've been having. Obviously without the actual PowerPoints, but a good deal of it is background and logistics and that sort of thing. So we will move through those comments and then move directly into the focus group session. If the PowerPoint comes back available, I will pop up a couple of slides for us. And if not, if anybody's interested, I am happy to share it. Just pop the information or send me an email. We will have some contact information for you. And you can just reach out to us directly and we're happy to send it to you. So this meeting is conducted for and on behalf of the Oregon Department of Consumer and Business Services, and information collected and recorded at this meeting is potentially subject to disclosure under a public records request. We are recording these sessions to ensure that we capture the feedback correctly. And if you wish to speak and are uncomfortable with having a specific comment recorded, please let us know and we can temporarily stop the recording. So we are here today on behalf of the Oregon Prescription Drug Affordability Board, or PDAB, to solicit constituent feedback related to the use of upper payment limits, or UPLs, to improve drug affordability and gather any recommendations you have on improving drug affordability for Oregonians. Joining us today from the PDAB board is Shelley Bailey, who is the board chair. And perhaps joining us later, Jane Horvath had a conflict, but she may be joining us later. And on the off chance that she does, I will go ahead and introduce her as Horvath Health Policy, who is also supporting the board with their work. So as we begin today's session, of course, we do want to thank you all for attending this second session of the PBM focus group, and we do appreciate your willingness to share perspectives on this topic. Let's see. As we move into the discussion part of this session, just some housekeeping. We do ask that you introduce yourselves and speak clearly for us so that we can accurately capture your feedback in our notes. And we do ask that you mute yourself when not speaking. Zoom does have a raise your hand function to be recognized to speak, and we would ask that people please use that so that we make sure we can recognize everybody who is interested in making a comment or speaking today. All right, so as some background, the Prescription Drug Affordability Board was established within the Department of Consumer and Business Services and is committed to protecting residents of Oregon, state and local governments, commercial and commercial and employer health plans, healthcare providers, pharmacies licensed in Oregon, and other constituent groups within the healthcare system from the high cost of prescription drugs. The board was established by the legislature under Senate Bill 844 in 2021, which was later codified into the Oregon Revised Statutes, Section 646A.693. And again, as we move through these discussions, our goal is to get your perspectives on the use of an upper payment limit to improve drug affordability and gather recommendations you have on improving drug affordability for Oregonians. And then, of course, these sessions are intended to inform the board's work on developing a plan for establishing UPLs as required under Senate Bill 192. So under their authority, the board is tasked with establishing a subset of drugs to review for affordability challenges within healthcare systems or that have high out-of-pocket costs for patients in Oregon. And so as they continue to refine their work, I would encourage you to visit their website for updates to their meeting schedule and activities. And they do have a meeting scheduled for July 24th. So I would encourage you to register for that meeting and check out the agenda, which has been posted. So in a 2022 report to the Oregon legislature, the board described their concept for a UPL in Oregon. And I'm sorry that we don't have the basics or the visuals from the slides that we had prepared, but specifically, the concept is intended to establish a maximum amount that could be paid for a prescription drug similar to federal upper limits or NADAC or MAC prices that are currently established and used in prescription drug reimbursement today. And so they are intended, if you think about pricing as a continuum, they are intended to sit sort of conceptually in the same place that a WAC or a federal upper limit or a MAC, a state MAC, or other similar metric would sit in order to establish, pricing drug reimbursement, much as it exists today. And so the proposed model, if you can imagine it, envision it, and in your thoughts, would be for the UPL to replace these metrics for the supply chain transactions along the continuum of prescription drug dispensing, administration, and reimbursement, with the UPL intended to be independent of dispensing or administration fees. So with all of that said, some of you did participate in the survey, so we're going to move through some of those similar topics and questions in our session, and appreciate any feedback that you have or comments. And as a reminder, again, please, if you would remain on mute unless you're commenting, remind us who you are, state your name and organization. When making comments, use the Zoom raise your hand feature. And we do have the ability for you to provide written feedback either on the focus group discussions or survey concepts to us at OregonPDAB@MSLC.com, or you can participate in the public comment process by writing and submitting a letter to the board or signing up to speak during a board meeting. And the board does have a form on their website for you to do that. And I will post both those into the chat itself if anyone is interested in doing using either of those options. So with that said, Bobby, I am going to turn it over to you, and let me know if there's anything I can do to help in the presence of network issues.
No, thanks, Linda. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, if I start cutting out, let me know and I'll come off video and see if that helps. But thanks again for everyone attending today. As Linda stated at the beginning, just want to, and I cut out, so I just want to make sure that I'm not the only one that missed this. But if folks do have comments that they'd prefer not to be on the recording, please just let us know. We're happy to hit pause and let you provide that, and then we can take the report back up. So just wanted to make sure to reiterate that. And then also just one other thing to reiterate that, these are really designed as listening sessions. We're here to solicit your feedback. We've met with a number of other constituent groups, and these are really designed to hear from you about these issues, particularly the UPL, in order for the board to sort of leverage the community's input as they fulfill their statutory obligation to the legislature in providing a report and recommendations on a UPL. So that's the intent of the call today. So with that, I'll go ahead and jump right in. we've started a lot of these sessions, or all of these sessions, I should say, really by level setting a little bit with each group to get some perspective, or to get the group's particular perspective on the impact of drug affordability. Obviously, there's a widespread belief, across the country that pharmaceuticals are really out of reach for a number of Americans due to their costs specifically. So I'm curious, from your vantage point, if there's anything you could share or would like to share on how your organization sort of perceives these challenges and your particular organization's ability to support or address these challenges, specifically drug affordability. So with that, if anyone would like to either jump in or raise your hand and we can get going. Again, looking to hear your organization's, industry's perspective from your vantage point on the affordability issue generally, and either actions your organizations take to address affordability, and/or recommendations or suggestions you might have on how your organization can impact the affordability issue for Oregonians.
Bobby, this is Tanya Neal with PCMA.
Great.
I will start just so we have a little bit of conversation to move
Oh,
forward.
appreciate it.
And so I wasn't on the last work group. We didn't get the email, so we didn't know about the focus group. So I'm a little bit behind on what you guys accomplished and what was the conversation was at 1st of July.
Start fresh, Tonya. We're starting fresh. We had several registrants, but very limited attendance. So start fresh today. So feel free to just jump right in.
Okay, so from a drug affordability standpoint, PCMA advocates for a comprehensive approach. We do not support price controls and our focus on transparency, competition, and market-based solutions from a holistic approach. From our vantage point for PCMA, we are in the supply chain, so we represent the National Trade Association for Pharmacy Benefit Managers. We have 26 members of all sizes in that ring. So from our perspective, one of the things that we truly believe is we're one of the only entities in the supply chain that really supports getting the best price for the plan and the plan participants from an affordability standpoint. And so that is in our mission statement.
Tonya, when you say, your organization supports a comprehensive approach, can you elaborate a bit on that in terms of, whether there are particular strategies that you are supportive of, whether there are particular strategies that you don't think would be as valuable? Just wanted to tease that out a bit.
Yeah. So price controls, we definitely think those are a hindrance to getting the best prices and we always support the market setting those prices. From a comprehensive, again, being able to negotiate discounts and rebates on behalf of the plans, being able to do formulary management. So we've got the best drugs on the formulary at the best price while working with our clients, encouraging the use of generics and biosimilars, all kinds of different utilization management programs, from prior auth to step therapy. All of these are tools in the PBM's toolbox that allows us to help keep those prices as low as possible for those plans and those plan participants, even when they go to the pharmacy. Drug utilization reviews, audits, again, that keeps everybody honest. Clinical programs and patient support. When I explain to somebody what a PBM does, frequently we have to start with we're the database behind the pharmacy when you go in to give your name and date of birth. And so that database, when they put your name and date of birth in, what that database does is it allows us to get you the right drug at the right time, and as prescribed. And so those clinical programs and patient support is a large part of what we do. We also support, transparency within the contracts with our consumer or with our clients. And then, of course, we always are here at the table to work collaboratively with all members of the supply chain, as well as the providers and the plans. Is that what you're looking for?
Yeah, no, that's great. I really appreciate that. Are there, well, before I go down this road, I'll be curious, are there others on the call who want to sort of build on what Tonya said, either, confirming other ideas in terms of approach, thoughts on affordability more broadly? Lisa, it looks like maybe you came off mute there.
Yes. Hey, Bobby, it's Lisa Whitmire. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for Affirmed RX. We're a public benefits corporation. So just a little bit about, representing the PBM space and more from a transparency standpoint. We are a public benefits corporation. So our mission, kind of going to where Tonya described PCMA, we exist really to undo some of the damage that's been done in the past in the pharmacy space, to help people take responsibility, and also looking at how we help employers make pharmacy benefits more simple for their plan members. Also, in addition to that, how we create efficiencies that help lower the healthcare spending overall, and then increasing member access to quality healthcare. So in addition to being a public benefits corporation, our mantra, our model is really about putting patients over profits. And so we manage to lowest net cost formulary. In addition to that, we are big proponents and advocates of making sure that the data is owned by the client. So data ownership is very important, particularly in the times that we're in right now, as we think about CAA and some of the Consolidated Appropriations Act and the work that's happening there. But in general, when we think about how Affirmed RX is a little bit different, we have complete pass-through of all the rates and the revenue as it relates to the retail network. When we think about mail order and specialty, there's no ownership there or conflict of interest for Affirmed RX. We have no desire to be in the mail order business and own that. So having multiple vendors, that also allows us to be able to negotiate optimal rates for pass-through. So getting back to the affordability question, complete pass-through of all rebates for all pharma-related revenue is another focus area of ours. And then when we think about as I mentioned, we are really focused on cost management to drive the lowest net cost. So hopefully that helps in terms of the conversation here, but drug affordability is and continues to be a very big focus area for us.
Thank you for that. Lisa, to kind of, obviously if you can or want to expand on this a bit more, or others for that matter as well, the discussion of the pass-through model is certainly something that we've heard from other constituent groups. We've heard some, sort of challenge the administrative complexity of that. We've had, some groups advocate for that. I'm just kind of curious, the folks' perception of that as a model, just in general, your thoughts on that. Obviously it's something that your organization clearly supports and has adopted. I'm kind of curious, what others think, any challenges associated with that. Just want to tease that out a bit more.
Yeah, sure. And I'll allow others here to jump in. But really, when we talk about our model, if you focus on the admin, we keep our pricing structure super simple and straightforward. We're paid a flat fee on a per script basis, and nowhere else in covering all the administration, the clinical support, the technology, and the reporting. All of that's included. We do obviously believe in pass-through And so the transparency and the data, that is something we continue to hear from the market. That's something that we continue to support, ensuring that that's there, that there is visibility to all parties involved around the cost components.
And then just out of curiosity, from an administrative perspective, is that something that you believe an entity in, a PBM, just broadly, generically speaking, is that something that, is that model, is that something that's easy to adopt?
It has not been a challenge for us, no.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, this is Tanya. So one of my questions is when we're talking about pricing models, how are how does that tying in with the UPL conversation?
The pass-through model?
Any of the pricing models, yeah.
Oh, sorry, I apologize. I think my network's cutting out a little bit. I missed what you had said there, Tony.
Oh, yeah, no worries. So when you said this, several folks have mentioned the pass-through model or the pricing. I guess my question is how is that tying in with the UPL of these focus groups?
Sure. Yeah. So as we've been having these conversations, I mean, part of the goal here obviously is to solicit folks' input on the UPL, on a UPL model, right? However, the board has also asked that we, really inquire as to are there other strategies that they might consider, to improve affordability across the board, but particularly for consumers at the point of sale. So that that approach has come up in a couple different discussions, and so Lisa's mention of it, I wanted to make sure that especially given sort of the PBM's position in the supply chain, wanted to make sure to get your all's input on that as well.
Thank you.
Does that help?
Yes.
Any thoughts on that? I mean, from your vantage point as PCMA?
Yeah. So how PBMs price their contracts and how their relationship interacts with either the pharmacies, whether the manufacturers or their clients. We want to be able to have as many tools as possible. And so pass-through pricing is one of several pricing models used by PBMs to manage drug costs and drug pricing transparency. Of course, we talk about spread pricing, which is risk-based. Some clients want the ability to assume the risk, and some want a flat known quantity. And so when you have multiple pricing models, you are able to really meet the needs of all of the clients out there, as opposed to limiting the tools that each one want to be able to work with. So it's fully choice, and we want to make sure that our clients have the ability to make that choice, which best fits their need.
Sure. Is there, and again, I apologize if it feels like I'm picking on you. I think you're in a unique position, so I definitely want to sort of take advantage of the opportunity to speak with you today. But is there, when you look at your membership, are there models that sort of rise to the top in terms of preference? Are there models that are not preferable? I'm just kind of curious, again, kind of from your vantage point, if there's anything you can share there.
I don't have any data because we don't discuss that with our clients, our members. And so again, we know that some do 100% pass through, some do fee-based, some do spread on different levels. And I think Lugina has her hand up, and she may be able to talk or answer that maybe a little bit more.
Sure. Lugina,
Hi there. Hi there. My name is Lugina Mendez-Harper. I'm a pharmacist, and I work with Prime Therapeutics, which is a PBM. I just wanted to jump in here and generally let you know, generally when a PBM is bidding for business, it is in response to a request for proposal. And so generally in those RFPs, the payer we'll specify like, what are they
Sure.
looking for? What is their, what types of members do they have? What types of, arrangements are they looking for? And then generally the PBMs will bid based on what's in the RFP. My understanding is that generally RFPs are responded to with they can present both pass-through models as well as risk-sharing models, and then the client payer, whoever that is, will look at the bids that come in from the PBMs and determine, which of these options meets their needs. So I think what Tanya is trying to say is, from our perspective as a PBM industry, we want to preserve the choices for our clients who are the payers, because ultimately it's their money that's paying for the benefit. It's their members that are being served, and we want to be able to have the flexibility to have to provide them with whatever type of pricing arrangement they feel meets their needs.
That's helpful. Thank you. I appreciate that. Any other thoughts on the kind of pass-through sidebar that I took there before we go back? Any additional kind of questions on your end, Linda, to tease that out anymore, or you good?
No, I think I'm good. Thanks.
Okay, great.
I don't know if you're planning to touch, we might as well touch now on the whole concept of the pass-through of rebates. We've talked a little bit about pass-through and transparency. And that's a suggestion that we've heard and seen in the survey and other focus groups. So I don't know if anybody has any thoughts on how easy or how difficult that is to pass through, for example, either rebates or patient assistance programs, directly to the patient or to the point of sale. Are there any limitations on how that can be done, how easy or difficult it is? So I think we would be interested in comment on that.
I'll start again. So I don't know that it's about ease of an administrative task. Again, the companies are sophisticated and are computer oriented from an administrative standpoint. I think the key on rebates is how that money is shared. So with the point of sale rebate, the patient will see the benefit at the counter, but it's not shared equally amongst all the plan participants. And so because point of sale rebates are limited to brand name drugs, and that 90% of our prescriptions are generic, you've got a lesser group, a smaller group that is going to see that impact, where when there are rebates sent back to the plan, as opposed to doing a point of sale, those rebates are spread, that cost savings is shared across the entire plan participants. And so that helps lower the premiums, that helps keep the co-pays lower, that helps provide those additional benefits. So it benefits everybody in the plan, where a point of sale is going to benefit a small few. And the other element of it is it doesn't encourage the, individuals to utilize generics, which is again a lesser cost, and it's another savings, another way we save money by being able to utilize those generics, because you only see rebates on brand name drugs. And so it serves two or three things to share those rebates across the plan by keeping everybody's premiums low and their copays and other elements. It gives them additional opportunities for benefits depending on what that relationship is. And what those contracts have been agreed upon. And then the other part of it is it really does encourage the use of generic drugs when the rebates are shared amongst everybody and they're not specifically going to somebody selecting a brand name drug because they'll get money at the counter. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's helpful. Others have thoughts on that? Any follow-up, Linda, on your end?
No, I was just really interested in thoughts about whether it was administratively difficult. Were there any limitations on, and I understand the points certainly that we're making about who receives it, but I was also looking to see if there were any concerns administratively about who gets it or how it's done.
Regina?
Hi there, this is Legina again. I just wanted to just share kind of a little bit of information about rebates. I think the question of administratively, what are we able to do? Most PBMs have the ability and have programs to do point of sale rebates if the client so chooses that as part of their benefit structure. But I think what Linda may be trying to get at is kind of the complexity of just rebate administration generally. And I think and again, I don't know I haven't been privy to the previous sessions to hear, what specific questions were said, but I think just generally drug rebates are just like rebates, like if you go buy a television, in that at the point of sale, you're paying, say the full price for the television or the full price for the drug. In this case, it's the payers paying that full price. And then down the road, someone, either, the maker of the TV or the maker of the drug, gives you a rebate. And so that's you get some money back, but it's later down the road. And so I think that may be, Linda, what you may be getting at as far as, the complexity of rebates. And that is something that we do have to struggle with. Well, not struggle, but have to address when we're doing point of sale rebates, is that you're asking for the payer to share a rebate amount at the point of sale when that rebate amount hasn't been given to the payer yet. And in some cases, the amount of that rebate is not yet known. So I think is that generally what you're asking about?
That is absolutely some of what we were trying to understand about, this proposed concept of how to pass rebates or patient assistance programs. We've heard the same thing around those as well.
Right. Right. And I think Tanya did a nice job from the macro perspective of talking about how currently what is happening now, rebates are shared with the clients that have hired us. And then those clients or payers do with those rebates, they use those rebates to, supplement their benefit, whether it be, maintaining, helping to control deductibles and copays and things of that nature. But there is a challenge because the whole structure of rebates is, generally we're reconciling rebates generally a quarter, 3 months later following the drug actually being dispensed. So it's a true up that happens, after several months. And so I think that really is generally kind of what the concern is from an administrative perspective, is trying to figure out how much do we, how much of, we think we're going to get X dollars as far as a rebate, but we don't know that for certain until it actually happens.
Do you have any real world experience? And I'll stop talking about this so Bobby can move on to another question after this. But do you have any real world experience for example, from West Virginia that you might be able to share around how those obstacles have been overcome?
I do not have any experience in West Virginia. Sorry, I can't answer that.
Okay. That's okay.
We can follow up with you. We have a staff person in each state, so I can get you some information on West Virginia specifically.
Great.
That would be fantastic. Yeah. Great. So with that, and I appreciate you indulging us on that again, these individual groups that we've been meeting with have kind of built on one another. So we, our questions and our discussion has really evolved over the past couple months. So I appreciate you supporting that discussion. Again, sort of talking about a bit, the potential to or strategies to address affordability, bringing it back to the UPL concept. What are your thoughts on, and I recognize this is a complex discussion and a lot of twists and turns, but, what are your thoughts on, just generally speaking, whether and to what extent an upper payment limit could impact affordability, particularly down to the consumer level? And I recognize that we're not saying, we're not saying a model that looks exactly like this, and here's the formula and all of that, but just conceptually, I'm curious of folks' perspective just on the UPL generally in terms of impacting affordability. It's like Linda was able to pull up the slide there. Linda, I don't know if you want to maybe just briefly, now that you were able to get this up, just kind of to level set a little bit more with folks.
Sure. This is a model that has been put forth by Horvath Health Policy and her work with Oregon and the Oregon PDAB. And it's really describing what I alluded to without the benefit of the picture earlier, but really sort of illustrates the intent and the continuum of UPL along the financial transaction model. And so it really kind of sits in between the manufacturer and the wholesaler. But as I mentioned earlier, it's intended to replace WAC or AWP, AAC, EAC, NADAC, federal upper limits, et cetera, one of many metrics that could be used in financial transactions. And as I mentioned, dispensing or administration fees, independent of ingredient cost, are still considered to be, part of the reimbursement formula and independent of the UPL.
And so with that, again, just, curious, your thoughts on whether, conceptually, a UPL, sort of irrespective of, the sort of formula or methodology, so to speak, could have a positive impact on affordability, whether you think it would have a negative impact on affordability. We've certainly heard a range of opinions on this as we've talked to different groups. As an example, some groups have sort of expressed a concern that, setting a UPL could create challenges for access. Challenges with, dispensing or patients who receive benefits outside of Oregon. A number of sort of pros and cons, and I'm curious what this group in particular thinks about just conceptually the UPL approach. Yeah, Regina.
Hi there. So thank you for getting this slide up. This is helpful. I definitely want to spend some time on it, but could you explain the notations on the bottom? UPL replaces, and then it lists something, and then
Sure.
What is? Yeah, thank you.
Sure. The WAC, wholesale acquisition costs, the AWP, of course, average wholesale price, AAC, which are generally actual acquisition costs, or EAC, estimated acquisition costs. I also mentioned FULs, which of course are federal upper limits, NADACs, which is a national measure of drug acquisition costs. Those sorts of basic or common, I should say, I guess, pricing metrics.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I don't know if that's what you're looking for, or
that helps. So I'm just trying to understand. So the thought process is that UPL would, so generally when we think about pharmacy reimbursement, there's the cost of the drug, then there's a dispensing fee, and then the patient cost sharing is factored in there as well, because the patient pays at the pharmacy counter depending on their benefits. So I just want to make sure I understand. The UPL is the metric which would set the drug reimbursement, but it doesn't impact a dispensing fee. That can still occur separate of the UPL, whatever that price is, right?
Right, where you might have an AWP minus or a WAC minus or an ASP plus model today. You would have a UPL sitting in that place. And and there was not, I don't believe there's an intent to try to dive into the patient's co-insurance and co-pays and that sort of thing. But you can see on the patient section that, those still exist and they're probably impacted, but certainly not necessarily part of the discussion for today. So this is really intended to be a descriptor or a metric for the financial transaction.
Okay. And what does it mean where it says there will be UPL minus in the supply chain?
I think, well, her intent with this is to illustrate that just like you have an AWP minus, for example, in a contract, the expectation is that UPL is sort of the top of it, but that that there's still an opportunity for UPL minus in the supply chain. For example, there may be contractual arrangements anywhere along this continuum that could result in a UPL minus.
Okay. And Tanya, is your question about repeating the question, is that for me or is...
No, it was for them. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
I was listening to all the details and I forgot what the question was.
Okay.
It was about patient affordability. Is that correct?
Yeah, it was really, targeted around just conceptually a UPL. Your perspective on, we've heard multiple positions on this across our, discussion with different constituent groups. So just really trying to tease out and understand, your general response to, UPL as a concept and whether you think that's something that could drive or improve affordability throughout the supply chain, and particularly for consumers. And I appreciate the devil's in the details here, but again, just thinking about it conceptually.
So from our position on UPLs is there's obviously a concern of price setting being illegal. So you're entering the competitive market in the free market world. So there's that question that's continually out there that several states have been having those conversations and can't seem to get around that issue. The other part of it is it leaves the drug manufacturers still free to charge whatever it wants for the product. So it puts pharmacies, physicians, and patients in the middle where historically, without UPLs, got the private sector being able to have creative solutions in order to try to rein in the costs and work with each of the individual plans. So from our standpoint is price controls they really don't work for a number of reasons. But a lot of that is around price setting. The manufacturers are still going to be able to charge whatever they want. And unless you can control that, you're still going to have those costs in the system.
Other folks have thoughts on that? Is there a way that, and again, just kind of thinking outside of the box here, is there a way that a UPL could be designed and implemented to mitigate some of those concerns? Because I think part of what, the board, in addition to thinking about, obviously soliciting feedback from constituents about, the concept itself. Part of what the board is tasked with providing to the legislature is really a plan for a UPL approach or UPL methodology. So, I think part of that really needs to be mindful of and consider potential unintended consequences. You've mentioned a few, Tonya. Is there a way to design the approach or sort of approach a UPL model or implementation of a UPL that could potentially mitigate some of those concerns that you raised?
So I think there are, and I think it's deeper than, I think that you have to bring the manufacturers in and have them at the table to have that conversation, because again, price setting from the manufacturer side of things becomes, again, something that is extremely challenging. There's, oversight and accountability that you could look at, but I really think that they're probably the best ones to be able to answer those questions.
Regina?
I just wanted to respond a little bit globally. So when you're looking at this slide, downstream, all of us, whether it's the wholesalers, the hospitals, the patients, the PBMs, the insurers, are tied to this UPL number that's set. But when you look at the manufacturer box, it says that, the manufacturer agrees to sell the drug at that UPL amount. So I think the concerns that we have, and again, it's theoretical now because, of where PDABs are in their life cycle, the whole setting of UPLs is a little bit, is something that they're starting to take on now. But for the states that I cover, none of them have set UPLs. So the concern that we have is theoretical, and that being if the PDAB says, UPL, we want the UPL to be whatever the amount is, and the manufacturer does not agree to sell it at that amount, but we as insurers, PBMs, purchasers, even the pharmacies and the hospitals, if we're tied, and the wholesalers, if we're tied to that UPL amount, that, that's the only amount that we are allowed to either reimburse to the pharmacies or bill, our concern is, what do we do? Like, if there's an instance where a manufacturer won't sell it at the UPL, but we are, as downstream entities in a supply chain, we're tied to that UPL. How do we manage that? Because again, we have an obligation to our clients' members to get them their medicines. And what do we do if we're like, okay, you've paid for a benefit, which includes access to your prescription drugs. We want to give you that drug. It's on the formulary. It's a covered benefit, but we can't, we're tied to this reimbursement amount, this UPL limit, but the drug's not available at that price point. What do we do in that instance? And I think, and again, it's a theoretical at this time because we haven't had UPLs yet set in the state, again, the states that I manage, or that I work with. So I'm just speaking from my experience. So that I think really is where, we're all kind of concerned, like whether you're the wholesaler, the pharmacy, the PBM, or the insurer, how do you reconcile, needing to provide that benefit and having an obligation to provide that benefit, but not being able to obtain the drug at that price point that has been set if the manufacturers don't agree with it.
That's helpful. Thank you, Eugenia. I want to be mindful of our time, so I'm going to jump ahead a little bit. As I had said before, in addition to sort of this discussion of the UPL specifically, the board really wants to use this as an opportunity to solicit input on, perhaps other strategies, other policies, other initiatives that they could recommend to the legislature to deal with, address this overall affordability issue. So, one question that we've been, asking groups is, are there other recommended strategies? We talked about, the pass-through model earlier, but beyond that, are there other recommended strategies that you would have, the board consider or, do additional research into, additional follow-up with stakeholders that could be leveraged or recommended to the legislature for leveraging in Oregon to address the affordability issue? So a little more of an open-ended, I know there's no silver bullet for any of this, but suggestions you might have the board consider.
I don't want to be the only one that speaks, but I will, just because we've let the silence sit there for a minute. When we talk about transparency, again, transparency needs to be, meaningful. It needs to be helping the patients and providers understand benefit options and costs so they can make informed decisions. We also are really adamant that we have to be able to protect our members need to be able to protect any proprietary rate information so that, again, it allows the market, the free market, to get the best prices out there. The last thing I think I would say in the big picture is I think you've got to bring all of the stakeholders of the supply chain to the table. And so focusing on, just the PBMs or, just the pharmacies is not going to get us to affordability. It's not going to change change things in the big picture for the patients, because there are 6 players in that supply chain. And I think they all have to be there, and there has to be transparency amongst all of them. As opposed to, we can point here and that's going to solve the problem. I mean, we've been doing this in Oregon since 2014, and there is, quite a bit of regulations on PBMs, not just from the state standpoint, but also from the federal standpoint, from the agencies, from the DOL at the through the federal government for the ERISA government plans, and so focusing just on the PBMs, I don't think is going to get us where we need to be. I think we've got to bring in all of the supply chain partners and look at it more holistically and identify the different areas that's going to be. So that would be my recommendation is that the PDAB really get to all members of the supply chain and see where all those specific details are coming in from the rate setting standpoint.
Well, and I will say, I appreciate that comment, Tony, and I do have one quick follow-up question, but I just want to say to make sure that everyone does understand, just in case we didn't clearly articulate this at the beginning, but part of these stakeholder engagement sessions, we have been meeting. We've done 2 meetings with each of the groups that are listed up here. Let me rephrase that. We've met with manufacturers, wholesalers, pharmacies of different stripes, insurers, and obviously now you with the PBMs. There is a separate vendor that supported the board in doing more patient level consumer feedback sessions. So the board has definitely sort of considered this as or wanted to look at this holistically and get input from the various players in the supply chain. So I just wanted to make sure that I was clear on that. And then I did have a question, Tony. You mentioned, I wrote down, meaningful transparency to help providers and patients understand the cost to be able to make informed decisions. What are some examples I'm just curious, some of the examples you might have been thinking of when you made that statement, really just trying to get to some concrete examples that we can include in our report to the board.
Let me think for a minute.
I can step in.
Thank you.
Generally the PBMs, we all have patient portals where folks can log in to see, my doctor just prescribed X drug. Is it covered? at what what is it covered at? Like, what's my copay or my cost sharing going to be? And generally we'll also provide information on, which pharmacies, they can get it at, whether it be mail order or retail, or, it just depends on what type of drug it is, a specialty drug. There are some drugs that you can only get from 1 or 2 pharmacies in the nation, because the manufacturers and the FDA have set, limited distributions for those drugs. So we do have, and so that's in our mind, from a PBM perspective, we generally are supportive of, actionable, helpful transparency. To be able to empower a member to go and look and see, like, is this drug covered? How much is it? And to have that information that, before they show up at the pharmacy counter, is transparency that we think is very helpful, and we all, support and have. So I think that's maybe what, and I'll let Tanya elaborate, but that's generally what we think about when we talk about, actionable transparency that is helpful to the member.
I think so much of it is being able to get the patient the tools so that they're not frustrated. We don't hear about the 6 million people that are happy when they go to the pharmacy. We hear about the ones who had a really difficult time. And again, I've been one of those. I totally understand. I also have the benefit of understanding why we have step therapy or why we have prior auth. And patients don't. And so patient assistance programs where they get information about, nonprofit aid or government programs, reporting within the contracts, again, from a transparency standpoint, requirements within the contracts between the plan and the patients and, the pharmacies. We're totally supportive of that kind of transparency. We get really concerned when that information goes outside of the players in the supply chain. Providing data on the cost of medications and to help prescribing practices, out of pocket cost calculators, things like that. We've got now you've got an app where you're standing in Salem, Oregon, and it can tell you the price of your drug in the 5 pharmacies in this specific area. Those type of tools, getting those to patients, I think are the key to getting past a lot of the frustration, and also being able to identify how we can get those drugs to the end user as affordable as possible. So more tools, I guess, through the networks and into the patient's hands.
Thank you for that. I just want to be mindful of time. We're just about at 1 o'clock. Thank you for everyone's input. I just want to, in this last minute we have left, is there anything that we haven't asked or we haven't discussed that you want to make sure to share with us so that we can incorporate in our feedback from these sessions back to the board? Yeah, Regina?
Yeah, I would just like to say, looking at this picture that you have here, it's similar to the challenges that we have in a non-PDAB, non-UPL world, in the world that it is now. Like, it all starts with the manufacturer. They set the price, whether it be when it's any of those things, AWP, UPL, and then everything flows from that point down. And so I think, that certainly is still looks to be a challenge in the PDAB world that is the same challenge that we have in the non-PDAB world. So I just would point that out.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I think the only other thing that we haven't brought up is the supply shortage and drug supply shortages. And so one of the reasons that PCMA opposes UPLs is because they act as a price control, which can lead to drug shortages by capping what payers can pay for the products. We find that it can disincentivize manufacturers from producing drugs, especially the low profit ones, which is what ends up creating the supply shortages. So the supply shortage is a really big concern as well. And we can take some of the questions and we can give you guys a follow-up in writing as well. So you have
Well,
some.
that would be great. Any, any additional comments that folks have, any additional information you want to share with the board? I don't know, Linda, if you were able to drop the email in the chat there, Linda's put in an email that you can send any feedback directly to us at that Oregon PDAB at MSLC. There's also a point on the PDAB's website that allows for formal submission of comments directly to the board. So I'd certainly encourage folks, if they have additional follow-up information they'd like to share, or, you leave this conversation, you think, I really wish I would have said that, or really wish they would have asked me about that, please don't hesitate to submit any follow-up information. So with that, I really appreciate everyone's time today, and I hope everyone has a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.